Welcome to Bitten in Northport, an SNN Herald Tribune special report. I'm Suzanne Lee.
And I'm David Hackett, Assistant Managing Editor of the Herald Tribune. Northport's police canine unit has long been a source of pride in Sarasota County's largest and fastest growing city. The unit has won a slew of awards, competed against police teams across the state and the nation.
But a nearly year-long investigation by the Herald Tribune's Michael Scott Davidson reveals another side to the canine unit. Northport's police dogs have bitten citizens, including juveniles, suicidal suspects, and even those never charged with a crime, at a rate that far exceeds any municipal police department in Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte counties. We caution you that some of the images, which are from Northport Police Department records, are gruesome.
The cases have sparked one federal lawsuit against the Northport Police Department. It was filed by a Florida state trooper whose teenage son was mauled by the Belgian Malinois named Tommy, the dog involved in the majority of the cases. The teenager was never charged with a crime, Suzanne, and we'll start by talking to the reporter who broke this story, Michael Scott Davidson.
Danielle Drake was bitten in the face by a Northport police dog in June 2014. The night that she was bitten, officers reported they were searching for the driver in a misdemeanor level hit and run that abandoned their vehicle and then fled on foot in a Northport neighborhood. The officers reported that they saw Drake, that she ran away from them, hid behind a large bush, and that when they surrounded her, she ran face first in their police dog. But Drake contends that she was walking down the street and officers unleashed their dog on her. It tackled her from behind and bit her in the face. Strangely enough, or interestingly enough, Police Chief Kevin Vespia went on the record with a journalist about a month later saying that Drake had only been nipped by the police dog, and she actually received a wound that took more than 30 stitches to repair the damage to her face and cost more than $10,000 in medical bills. And I should point out that she was never charged with the crime, not with resisting arrest or with being involved in the hit and run at all. She remains uncharged.
While Drake was never charged with a crime, despite witness statements claiming that she had been a passenger that evening in a vehicle police suspected was involved in a hit and run shortly before Canine Tommy was deployed.
The pain, it was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt.
One of the many files Davidson reviewed is the case of 43-year-old Kyle Crosby, who says he was being harassed by police for quite some time.
They were always saying they were doing an investigation, and it had to do with my ex-girlfriend making up these false allegations. And they were buying into her stories, and they just kept showing up. The first couple times, we talked to them. Then after that, they'd be showing up in the middle of the night, banging on our doors, shining flashlights in it. My parents had interactions with them late at night, and they were doing that. I'd say they did this on 7 or 8 different occasions.
May 2012 is a night Crosby will never forget.
But I was sleeping, and then, I heard the banging on the door, and I'm thinking, here, they're up to their old tricks again. And they're out there, and I believe they stayed out there for about 2 or 3 hours in the driveway, and they got on a loudspeaker, and they were saying, step outside, this and that. But they had been harassing me for so long. It's like I didn't know what to believe with these people. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, so I decided to stay in my bedroom.
Also in her bedroom was Crosby's 69-year-old mother, Elizabeth.
And they came in. I couldn't move or anything, and I was so afraid because I knew that dog was in the house. I'm ashamed to say I was afraid for myself. I was never even thinking what they were going to do to Kyle. And then they finally, the older officer, he pulled down the covers and stuff and told me to get up. I reached, because all I had was my underwear and a tank top on. And I reached to get my shorts, and then he grabbed me and told the younger of the two to put me in handcuffs.
As he heard Northport police enter his parents' house, Crosby says he turned on the light in his bedroom and opened the door.
Hands behind my back, 2 sets of handcuffs. This was the part that, they beat the living daylights out of me with their fists, okay? I mean, it was such a barrage of blows. It was just like I'm just taking like this everywhere on my body. It was just unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. And then after they got done with that, this was what really did it. They let the dog chew and rip my leg apart. and the dog stayed on my leg while I was screaming in agony to get the dog off of me for at least 60 seconds, and they just let it chew. These officers were never held accountable for this. They got away with this. They all should have been charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Police reports suggest Kyle Crosby and his parents ignored police attempts to serve an arrest warrant for aggravated stalking, causing police to forcefully enter the home with the canine. Northport Police administrators say they've reviewed the cases involving their award-winning canine unit, and they say best practices have been followed. Davidson researched over 2,500 Northport police and other documents during his investigation and finds the department's canine bites exceed other agencies.
After looking at 5 years of Northport police records from 2010 through 2014, we found that more than 30 people had been bitten by Northport police dogs, and that was more than the combined total for one city than the combined totals of Punta Gorda, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton, and Palmetto combined in that same time period. We also found a case where an 18-year-old was attacked after police responded to a possible suicide attempt by him. His mother called police and told them that his sister had found a noose in their family's garage and that she was afraid her son might hurt himself. Police were dispatched to the home. They brought a canine with them, found the boy hiding in the garage, and ordered the canine to bite him because he wouldn't show them his hands quickly enough. There was also another case where police were dispatched to a home where a man had slit his wrists and then run away from the residence. They found him behind the home in a wooded area and reportedly ordered their police dog to attack because the man would not show them their hands and comply with their orders. But that man told us that he had lost so much blood from his suicide attempt slitting his wrist that he wasn't able to even do anything.
Davidson says the man identified as Mark told him he was despondent one night in July 2014 and slit his wrist in an attempt to commit suicide. But he says he was literally almost dead when police arrived.
I vaguely remember them saying, "Show me your hands," vaguely, and there was no way I could do it. So I don't know if they thought I was not listening to them or whatever. This is the scar I have as a result of the dog bite. It's about 1 foot long.
Northport police records indicate Mark posed a danger to them because his hands were concealed in the brush. Mark says it wasn't long before his wounds became infected.
And it was spreading, and that the only way they could do it was by an open incision, and then they would have to get all the bacteria out. And you can't close up a dog wound because the infection will just stay in there, so I had to leave it open.
He says he had to be resuscitated twice, and he remains weak today.
I really can't lift heavy things anymore because they had to cut through my stomach muscle, and they say that it'd probably take about 8 months for it to heal, so I can't really lift anything over 10 pounds, and if I stretch, it feels like I'm gonna rip it open again. And, you know, it's just always sore and painful, and it didn't need to happen.
What's really interesting is both these cases were approved without further review by police administrators.
We'll hear more from Michael Scott Davidson later in the program. When we return, we'll get a wider perspective from Charles Meslow, an administrator at Northern Michigan University who is a national expert on the use of police dogs.
Welcome back to Bitten in Northport, an SNN Herald Tribune special report. When it comes to the use of police dogs, no one understands the process better than Northern Michigan University's Charles Meslow. Meslow formerly worked as a canine officer for the City of Venice Police Department and has since become a national expert on the use of police dogs. He says the bite ratio of the Northport Department is alarming.
The bite ratio looks at the total number of apprehensions with the dog versus the number of times the dog actually bites or injures the suspect. So if you apprehend or catch 10 people and your dog bites one of them, you have a 10% bite ratio. It's pretty simple. It's one of the more basic barometers for police use of force.
We looked at every single deployment that was recorded by the police canine unit in Northport from 2010 through 2014. And after consulting with Charles Meslow, we determined that the canine unit had averaged a bite ratio of 37% in those 5 years.
Meslow says that's high.
The standard is 30%, not going above 30%. Hopefully it's lower than 30%. But 30% is supposed to be kind of a cutoff level. And this is the basic barometer for determining misconduct with police dogs.
Meslow says a high bite ratio could be indicative of a larger problem.
Well, without looking at each individual case, it's hard to say, but 37% is starting to border on into a problem area. And I would probably be looking at each individual case at this point, trying to determine if there's some type of a cause, whether it's officer caused or if it's dog caused, training caused, policy related, whether the dogs are being used in a broader range, where they're having the opportunity to bite more people. There's a lot of different factors.
Northport police contend their K-9 unit go through extensive training via Florida Law Enforcement K-9 team and the Police K-9 Association. But Davidson reviewed more than 2,500 pages of Northport police files and found one officer dog team is hard to ignore.
I can't really give you one thing that's his best. He's an all-around great dog. It's like my best friend, you know, and everyone has a best friend, but I get to take mine to work with me.
In recent years, no officer on the Northport Police Department's K-9 unit has won more awards than Keith Bush, but no other officer has come close in the number of dog attacks that have come from their K-9 partner.
Stellan. That's a good boy, Stellan. That's nice, boy. Yeah, go boy. That's good.
In the span of 3 years, Keith Bush's K-9 partner, a Belgian Malinois named Tommy, bit more than 20 people, far outnumbering several departments we looked at, and more than any other officer we looked at for sure.
Another person bitten by Tommy is 30-year-old Bobby Shears.
Everybody I told, they're like, wow.
It was 3 a.m., April 2013, and Shears was in an unfamiliar part of town. He admits to drinking way too much after almost getting into a fight at a party.
I left walking because I was too drunk to drive, so I was walking down the road and trying to go home and was on the phone with my wife, and my phone died, telling her to come get me, but my phone died, and that's the last I can remember.
Police reports indicate Shears broke through a sliding glass door, possibly using a patio chair. The homeowners fled and called police. Officer Bush and K-9 Tommy arrived on the scene and found Shears seated in a chair in the dining room. After refusing to show his hands, Bush commanded Tommy to bite, leading to the loss of a pint of blood.
I came to a little bit while I was on the floor and was in extreme amount of pain, and I remember screaming, and I knew I was in pain, and then my eyes just rolled in the back of my head and I was out again. They told me that I needed a blood transfusion.
Police reports indicate Shears was charged and subsequently found guilty of 4 counts of damage to property, resisting officer obstruction, and armed burglary, among a few of the charges. While being treated at Sarasota Memorial, Shears says Officer Bush came to fingerprint him and asked if Shears wanted to know the name of the dog that bit him.
And I was like, well, it don't really matter, but he said a dog named Tommy, and I should have let him go for your throat, pretty much.
This is him 24/7. He wants to work. The only time he doesn't is when he's in his kennel, but if I'd let him out, he'd be ready to go. He thinks we're going to work. Find it.
So Northport utilizes a breed of dog called the Belgian Malinois, and those are the canines that are trained to bite on Northport's K-9 units. These dogs are extremely fast. They can run at 30 miles per hour, we were told by a military veterinarian. They can bite 8 times harder than a human. That's hard enough to crush bone, tear through ligaments, cause some real disfigurement. And to really point out their application, this was the same breed of dog that was brought when SEAL Team 6 raided the Bin Laden compound. So, I mean, these dogs have been employed by the military before they were used by police departments.
Reporter Michael Scott Davidson found Northport's policies also contributed to the large number of biting cases. Davidson explains.
We didn't just look at the sheer number of bites for this investigation. We actually looked at Northport's written canine policies and how those have been amended over the last 5 years. And what we found out was that in previous versions of the policy, It stated that canines should be used to apprehend or bite people that have been reasonably believed to have committed felonies or violent misdemeanors. But that policy was actually expanded in 2014 to canines can apprehend anybody reasonably believed suspected to have committed a crime, which includes non-violent misdemeanors.
Canine expert Charles Meslow says with a bite ratio of 37%, the agency may want an internal review.
At that level, I'd start looking at each individual case and trying to determine what the underlying cause of that percentage of bites is. It could be related to the officers, it could be related to the training of the dogs, it could be related to the policies, and it could be related to something completely different.
Meslow adds tracking dog bites within a police agency is considered a local responsibility.
Well, I can tell you it's not tracked at the federal level or the state level, at least not in any way that I'm aware of. It's tracked usually at the agency level, and that's self-regulated. The agency decides, what's appropriate behavior and how they're going to monitor that behavior, because they're the ones that's going to get sued.
After a year of investigating the Northport Police Canine Unit, we found that one lawsuit has been filed in federal court alleging a violation of civil rights due to excessive force by the Canine Unit. We also know that in the coming months there's expected to be another civil rights lawsuit filed in federal court because of the Canine Unit.
In a response to the Herald Tribune special report, Northport Police says in 2012, K-9 teams have received roughly 24 awards for competence and professionalism.
Police K-9, no run, I'll send the dog! Police K-9!
When we return, we'll get a closer look at K-9 units at Palmetto Police Department, which are on the opposite end of the bite ratio spectrum. Stay with us. Welcome back to Bitten in Northport and SNN Herald Tribune's special report. The city's police department has had more of its share of problems in recent years. In 2014, an officer committed suicide as sheriff's deputies came to arrest him on charges of sexual battery.
A Herald Tribune investigation published last year found that 19 Northport police officers have been investigated 3 or more times in the past 18 years for offenses ranging from conduct unbecoming to burglary. But when it comes to unleashing dogs on citizens, one officer stands out, Keith Bush.
The number of officers on Northport's K-9 unit has really been in flux over the last 5 years. 3 officers have either left the unit or the force while being investigated for misconduct. The Northport Police Department's website reports that there are as many as 4 dogs, each with their own handler, on the K-9 unit at once. Currently, there are 3. Since Keith Bush and his K-9 partner Tommy went on patrol in 2011, Tommy has bitten more than 20 people. What we found was that while Northport's bite ratio was high, Keith Bush and Tommy's was higher. From 2012 through 2014, they averaged a bite ratio of 40%. And if you look at it annually, in 2013, they averaged a bite ratio of 50%.
Here's another type of sleeve we use. Chris, need you.
On the opposite end of the bite ratio spectrum is Palmetto Police Department.
Police K-9, no run, I'll send the dog! Police K-9, no run, I'll send the dog!
Between 2010 and 2014, Palmetto Police report 27 apprehensions, all without a dog bite.
That's our good man, yeah. Yeah, that good boy. Watch that bad man.
Palmetto Police Department K-9 trainer Chris Leister.
It's a command is for apprehension, and it's a bunch of steps that we have to go through. We don't deploy them on just simple misdemeanors. We generally reserve deploying our dogs for violent crimes, crimes against people, robberies, things like that of the such. And when we locate the subject that we're looking for, the suspect, we give them every opportunity to give up peacefully without the use of the dog.
Palmetto K-9 Unit Patrolman Adam Spadafora sums up Palmetto Police Department K-9 Unit this way.
Well, we have 2 persons in the K-9 unit right now, Officer Leister and myself, and I've done it for around 3 years. When we respond to a call, we try and get the most accurate description we can of the perpetrator, and then we go looking for the person wherever they were last seen. we find the person, we give them a command. Come out or get on your knees, hands on your head. We try and give them the opportunity to give up and allow themselves to be placed in custody for the investigation. If they don't comply, then we have the option of using our dogs to run and apprehend them.
No police agency wants to go on record speaking out against another department, but with 27 apprehensions and no bites, Captain Mike Stinson, K-9 Unit Enforcement Bureau Commander with Palmetto Police, says they're not doing anything differently.
No, our officers, they follow the standards set by the state, and certainly they follow what the law prescribes. And they're, again, very professional in their deployments and in their actions.
Leister told Herald Tribune's Scott Davidson Palmetto Police track canine apprehensions in a digital record management system and says handlers also review their recent activity with a police captain at weekly training meetings. During Davidson's investigation, he learned 3 handlers have left the Northport K-9 unit amid allegations of misconduct since 2010. Police Chief Vespia declined to be interviewed, citing pending litigation. The photographs are very difficult to look at: punctured, ripped flesh, scarring the person for life, emotionally, physically, and financially.
Every person that we spoke to who was bitten told us that whether they were charged with a crime or not after the police dog bit them, they were liable for the medical bills they racked up. For one family, that was more than $20,000. For Daniel Drake, that was more than $10,000. One man whose medical records that we didn't see, but he had to get surgery after he was bitten because his bite got infected, said that he racked up more than $100,000 in medical bills because of the surgery and staying in the hospital afterwards.
Davidson says many people bitten by a Northport Police K-9 suffer long-lasting physical effects, and he questions how the use of the dog is classified.
They have trouble walking now. If their jobs require them to do a lot of physical activity, they're plagued by that sort of pain every day. Daniel Drake, who has been in the face, suffers from migraines stemming from where she was bit. She also has traumatic flashbacks, she says, to wiping the blood from her face after she was bitten. Just the injuries these people have sustained during their apprehensions have lasted far longer than any injury that could be caused by taser or baton strike or pepper spray, which are all in the same category of weapon as police dog bites.
I could hear the dog chewing and eating my muscle tissue, the tendon, the ligament. I could hear him just eating the stuff. It was the most, you just don't even understand how helpless I was.
Northport police confirm in writing to SNN that Crosby was charged with and found guilty of stalking and resisting officers without violence, and says the chief has no comment on the severity of the bites.
I would have rather them tased me with the biggest taser they had than sick that dog on me. Every time you go to stretch, it feels like it's going to rip open, and the pain is terrible.
Well, I have 3 young children that they know what happened to Daddy with the big wound on my leg. They're totally terrified of dogs. I've told them it's okay. Every dog ain't like that.
To learn more about this investigation, go to heraldtribune.com. You'll find Davidson's special investigation, police records, video interviews, photographs that police took at the scene, and more.
For our SNN Herald Tribune special report next month, we'll focus on athletes and concussions. If you know someone who's suffered a concussion from football, soccer, or another sport, let us know at news@snntv.com.
Thank you for watching. I'm David Hackett.
And I'm Suzanne Lee. Good night.